Hello, and thank you for checking out another brief video. Today we want to talk about Trump, the federal government, some of the policy ideas that they've floated out over the course of the last couple days, and investing in real estate overall. So the first thing that I would say is Trump has been infatuated for a long time with the idea of reducing interest rates. He has been beating up the Federal Reserve for a long time, trying to encourage them to reduce rates and to do something to get housing more affordable. In his most recent ploy or idea that I've heard here in the last couple days, he talked about reducing credit card rates for consumers. And that is just an example of another physical, explanation or depiction of how Trump likes to micromanage businesses and our markets to try to get his way when things don't exactly go how he feels it's appropriate. So what recently happened is Trump is trying to say that credit cards no longer can charge a fair interest rate. They need to charge his form of a fair interest rate, which means they shouldn't be taking into account if a borrower is a healthy or good borrower or not. They should be giving everyone a rate that the rate that I heard was under 10%. So everyone should get that fair rate, even if they just finished declaring bankruptcy or always declare bankruptcy over and over again. Trump feels like this individual should still be able to obtain a 10% interest rate, irregardless of anything else, just because he thinks it's fair and it will help with affordability. And I wouldn't say this is a housing ploy, but this is just another ploy to help with overall affordability. And then the big thing that he's been pressing on the Fed is his desire for interest rates to be much lower. So he has kind of beaten them up for a long time. He has said for a while that he's going to replace the current Fed chair with somebody else when he can. We'll see if that actually happens, but that's supposed to be May of this year. It wouldn't surprise me if we ended up with a new Fed chair. It's just because we get a new Fed chair does not mean that we are going to get lower interest rates. It is still a function of interest rates are going to be determined by the committee. And really more so than that, in my opinion, interest rates are determined by the free market. But Trump may be able to coerce the free market into doing things his way. That has yet to be seen. Historically, interest rates are controlled by the 2-year rate. So the Fed funds rate is typically just a function of where the 2-year rate is. The Fed always just follows the 2-year rate. If that's going to change, that would be a major change, but it could happen. And that is, again, Trump trying to basically control the cost of money. So if Trump can get somebody to give us money or give you money at a lower rate, Trump can kind of force a financial institution to make less, charge less, and hence that would give us lower costs. If Trump can get a bank to lower rates for a home mortgage, Trump can lower our home expenses and quote unquote make homes more affordable. Now, that is great in concept and it sounds like a really good idea. In reality, I'm not 100% sure that that's how it's going to function. Usually what price fixes do is cause distortions in other aspects of the market. We will see what Trump's credit card policies actually end up netting for us, but usually that will cause other problems that will end up increasing our costs elsewhere and decreasing some potential costs on our credit card payments, overall doing more harm than good, which is what usually happens when the government tries to get in bed with other corporations or tries to get their way if the free market isn't obliging or accommodating what they want. So Trump is trying to price fix the cost of money is the first thing in this video. The second thing in this video that I wanted to go out and talk about is he is also trying to micromanage who can and cannot buy homes. So Trump has another idea that he feels like if he can micromanage corporations from not owning homes in geographic locations of his desiring, I guess, that will help with the cost of housing. This is something that does make some sense. After all, housing is controlled. Housing prices especially are controlled by supply and demand. So if there is more supply on the market, that could cause prices to modestly come down. Again, this is another form of price control. I don't think this is going to have the positive effect that Trump wants and the feds want, but it could in the short term have some effects that might make things appear like housing prices are coming down. We shall see how this plays out and how this works. It's going to be harder than he thinks to implement this. So usually when a government comes out with a price control idea, the free market is on top of that, and they are trying to figure out ways to circumvent that. Maybe it's making smaller pools of investors so that they don't classify as an institutional investor. Listen, there's always ways around government regulations, not always, but almost always ways around them. And free markets, if they can make a buck, they will figure out a way to get around them, just like banks figure out ways to get around government regulations that are supposed to and are designed to fix or correct what errors the banks are making in the government's eyes. These ideas usually just don't work that well. In my opinion, this will be another example of that, but it is an effort by the Trump regulators or by the Trump administration, by bureaucrats in DC to try to micromanage housing costs. It could have an impact. It could work a little bit. I'll tell you the third thing that I've heard more and more about is rent control. And I would just say this. Rent control is already in effect in some areas. Rent control could, again, have an effect on the supply of what's being sold in the marketplace. So if I own a rental and the government comes in and says that I can only charge half of what I was renting, that could, in fact, force me to sell that rental and place it on the market. It also, of course, has an unintended consequence. If Trump is causing that to happen, let's say it's me, let's say I take my property and I put it on the market, I sell that property, that allows somebody else to buy that property. It probably would not end up in the rental pool. Again, most properties don't sell to renters, to landlords. They sell to owners. So if that property went from a rental to a owned property, obviously then there's less rentals in the market. And again, go back to the same supply and demand scenario. If there's less supply, there's going to be the same demand. Less supply, same demand means those prices would go up. So in a roundabout way, it may make certain buyers happy because they may be able to afford more, but what will that do to rents overall? It will probably cause them to continue to rise. And in reality, that's really what we need to be focusing on is the free market, not the price controlled market, because the free market always will find a way to win. No one is going to own a rental property and be comfortable with a loss forever. After all, this is an investor. They are buying this property as an investment. If you buy something or I buy something as an investment, we expect to get a fair rate of return on that investment. If we're not getting a fair rate of return on that investment, what's going to happen? Surprise, surprise, we're going to sell the investment and buy something that we can get treated fairly to get a fair return on our capital. So, in my opinion, all of these ideas are just a matter of trying to fix prices and have prices be more in line with what the government wants. I know this idea sounds great. It sounds great to me too. I love the effort that could be shown by our ideas here. In reality, what needs to be done is we need more supply of houses. What does that mean? We need more building, or we need more inventory on the market, and that will cause both current prices of rentals and current prices of houses to come down. What does it take to do that? It's pretty simple. Less government regulation, meaning stop imposing on builders like myself what size we need to build. In my county, we have to build a 600 square foot first floor. If we would eradicate that idea, or if we would eradicate some of the other ideas about housing sizes that we manipulate or force upon buyers, that could cause cheaper housing to be built. Let me give you an example. If I'm going to build a 1,200 square foot spec house, and that house is going to cost me $225,000 to do, and let's just hypothetically say the government eases up on their restrictions and they say, okay, it doesn't have to be 1,200 square feet. You can build an 800 square foot house. Guess what? Building an 800 square foot house versus a 1,200 square foot house, it's going to be cheaper. So by common sense, if I can build a cheaper house, I can charge less to the consumer. That is the way to drive housing prices down, as well as stop wasting money. If they would stop spending money on frivolous items that drive all of our prices higher, this would cause all building costs to come down. If building costs come down, housing costs will come down. Hey, listen, if I'm trying to build and sell a house, right? Let's say I get a house done and I have, $250,000 in my house, and I'm trying to sell it for $300,000. Let's say it's a new house that's on the market. And let's say a competitor of mine was able to build the same house because housing costs came down, meaning input costs, meaning the wood, the siding, the HVAC materials, the plumbing materials, the copper. If all those house prices come down and the next guy can build that same house for $200,000 and he's only charging $250, and I'm over here at $350 or at $300 because I have $250 in mine, that is going to drive housing prices down. I am going to have to lower my price if I want to be competitive with the marketplace. The way to do it is by reducing overall spending, reducing overall costs of the input of the house, which will then trickle into a lower cost of housing. This is just something that kind of, in my way of thinking, a little bit bothers me, but there's not really much we can do about it. So what we need to do as investors and as builders and as people who are in the real estate market is just pay attention, use common sense, and think logically. You got to try to filter out some of the dead noise that gets into our ears and just try to use common sense and make educated monetary decisions about both what you decide to build, what you decide to invest in, and how you decide to price those things overall. Hopefully this was helpful and informative. Have a good one. Talk to you soon.